Welcome back to Dart Bank Insights. I'm your host, Brendan Andrews, and joining us today we have on John Grocki from Dart Investment Centers, who's the investment manager there. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really impressed with the recording studio we've got set up here.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Going into sort of retirement and adjusting your investment strategy by age, would you have any recommendations for someone that's just starting their career or just out of college a couple years? What kind of recommendations would you give them for being aggressive or really setting themselves up for success later on?
Sure. So I do try and stay away from just blanket recommendations for people because I think that there's always going to be some type of unique situation for somebody and things that we need to customize. That being said, to answer your question, I think that one of the bigger mistakes that I see young people especially make is being a little too cautious, a little too conservative with some of their retirement funds. And certainly not that they need to put everything on red, but I do think when you are in your 20s and when you are just starting with your career, boy, you're never going to have an easier time to be a little bit more oriented towards growth, towards looking at investments that have a little bit more potential to grow a little bit more quickly for you. And so really getting some of our younger clients to really focus on that growth aspect of their accounts, I think is where we like to start with those people. Getting them comfortable with some of the moves that the market will make, because they will have their good days and bad days inside those accounts, and preparing them for those is what makes it a little bit easier for them, I think.
So, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about, if someone's a recent college graduate, what steps should they take to sort of get themselves going in a retirement account or any investing?
Sure. So their employer plan is going to be a big piece of that, looking at what the employer offers, typically 401k plans, something along those lines, making sure they're contributing enough to get to take advantage of the match that their employer is offering. When I sit down with, particularly with young people who are just getting started, a lot of time there's a tendency where they say, things are kind of tight right now with my budget, and so I'm just going to wait 6 months and then I'll start contributing. And typically for those folks, what I'll really focus on is, okay, I don't want you on bread and water. I don't want you to be crippling yourself with your cash flow and everything else. But I think that it works much better if people just make small contributions, even if it's just 1% or less of your pay. And what I always tell people is that the hardest part of all of this is getting started. That process of, boy, my employer gave me this paperwork, I've got to fill it out, I've got to turn it in, I've got to get enrolled for this plan. Doing that part of it is almost always the hardest. And so I think that a lot of times people have all the intentions of the world. I'm gonna get started with this 401k in 6 months' time. I'll come back, I'll do it all then. And then next thing you know, it's been 6 months. Next thing you know, it's been 5 years, and you haven't done it. If instead, right from the beginning, look, I'm just going to do a small amount. I know it's not a whole lot right now, but I'm going to try and do 1% just to get started. You will be able to get your statements regularly. You'll have a constant reminder, at least every 3 months, that, oh yeah, I do have this account. And you know what? This 1% is not so bad. Maybe I can bump it up to 2 or 3 or 4. And so it's not sort of out of sight, out of mind, the same way as if you'd never enrolled in the first place. So take just baby steps of getting enrolled, making a small contribution, and then revisiting and coming back later. I think that's a real important thing for people that are just getting started.
And going back to your 6 months to 5 years, I mean, that's time where your money really could have grown with compound interest and growth. And
yeah, and that's another interesting point, because here's another common thing that happens. And these days, it used to be somebody would get a job, they would work for a particular company for 40 years, and they would retire from that company. That has become a much rarer phenomenon, or a much rarer set of circumstances these days. People change employment quite frequently now. There's a real strong desire in a lot of those cases where somebody will say, look, I worked there for 2 years, I've got $2,500 in the 401k, it's not that much, I'm just going to cash it out and I'll start over. And what I tell those people is, I'm not so much worried about the $2,500. You'll make $2,500, you'll get that into the plan, but guess what? It's the 2 years. It's the 2 years that you lost getting that started, and now you're starting all the way from scratch again. And so making sure that especially for our younger folks, that they understand that when you do change employment, you can pick that plan up in almost every case. You can pick that plan up, you can transfer it to your new employer, you can move it to your own individual account, an IRA. Cashing that out can really set you back. And again, it's not the money, it is the time, quite honestly.
Right. Well, that wraps up today's Dart Bank Insights podcast. Thanks for joining, and until next time, I'm your host, Brendan Andrews.